Welcome to yet another build video. This F-22 Raptor in 70-second scale was particularly meaningful to me for several reasons. Firstly, the F-22 stands tall as one of my absolute favorite aircraft. Secondly, this project is some kind of milestone for me because it was the first time someone personally asked me to build a model for them. My loyal follower Marie shares my passion for the F-22. I had this kit tucked away in my stash for several years now. The reason I hesitated to tackle this Revell kit over the past few years was due to the daunting challenge of recreating the intricate paint job of the Raptor on a plastic model. If you look at photos of the real aircraft, you will notice quite significant variations in appearance. While some airframes have this metallic sheen to it, others appear darker and flat. Lately I've even seen heavily weathered Raptors, where it seems that the special stealth coat is visibly wearing off. Anyways, when Marie approached me with the request to build her a Raptor, I finally found the courage to start building this kit. By the way, if you like my models and fancy having one for yourself, don't hesitate to contact me. My plan for the F-22 has always been to display it mid-flight so you can see the slick appearance of the aircraft with the landing gear retracted. However, before realizing that, I had to assemble and paint the aircraft. As usual, I began with the cockpit. Overall, the parts were nicely detailed, but I had to remove some flash on a couple of parts. I did not use any aftermarket products since the cockpit was already sufficiently detailed, featuring a control stick as well as a throttle lever. The only addition I made from scratch was the handle for the ejection seat. Once the instrument decals were applied, I added a touch of dry brushing for added depth and realism. Naturally, an airborne aircraft requires a pilot. Therefore, I used one of these US pilot figures from PJ Production. As far as I know, Raptor pilots are not equipped with these JHMCS helmets, but that's just a minor detail I decided to overlook given the small scale. When that was done, the cockpit top was glued to the upper part of the fuselage. With the head-up display in place, the cockpit section was finished. Before proceeding further with the assembly process, I had to do a few minor corrections. For example, I used a razor saw to open up these small gaps at the control surfaces. Furthermore, I added a few rivets. Always check your reference material while building these kits. The weapon bays are quite detailed apart from some sink marks. Nevertheless, I opted to close all the weapon and wheel bay doors. Before gluing the fuselage halves together, I thought about a proper solution to display the aircraft in flight, using an acrylic rod. I used a rotary tool to drill a hole matching the size of the rod into the underside. Then I repurposed some leftover spruce to create a makeshift contraption on the upper side of the fuselage. This served as a secure slot for the acrylic rod, ensuring the model would stay in place. This was a quite simple solution, but it works. After attaching the horizontal stabilizers, I glued the fuselage together. I worked in sections and placed some clothes pegs while allowing the glue to set. Overall, I had no major fitting issues, which is quite a pleasant surprise considering it's a Revell kit. Nonetheless, a couple of joints needed a bit of filling and sanding for a seamless finish. This Revell kit comes with a slightly tinted canopy glass, which is awesome. To mask it, I decided to mostly use liquid mask this time. The tape seen here was placed for easier handling of the part without touching the liquid mask. As usual, I used white glue to mount the canopy. Now the assembly was mostly done apart from the vertical stabilizers. I decided not to glue them on for easier transport to Marie later on. Then the painting process started. I did a lot of research beforehand and had a few ideas on how to achieve a somewhat realistic outcome. The first step was the priming, where I used black one-shot primer from Ammo. Then I sprayed on a layer of MRP's chrome. As you can see, the result was already quite interesting, but I wasn't finished yet. I continued the pre-shading process by using my template and various paint tones. This resulted in random patterns of metal, blue and rust colors. The next step was to find the correct gray tones. As you can see, I used the stabilizer to test 4 different paints. For the slats and other edges around the aircraft, I used light ghost gray from MRP. Masking of these areas was very time consuming. The next paint I applied was FS36251 with a few drops of polished metal mixed into it. Again, this was all quite experimental. However, after a few thin coats of this mixture, the metallic shine was still quite apparent. To mask off the areas for the second gray tone, I used Patafix Poster Tack. This flexible material is easy to use and doesn't leave any residue. However, it still required a significant amount of time to mask off the desired areas. For the larger areas on the wings, I therefore came up with a different solution. I simply drew the shape on paper, cut it out and secured it to the wings using a bit of Patafix. The slight gap between the paper and the model resulted in a smooth transition between the colors. Unfortunately, I don't recall which paint I used for the darker batches. I think it was fog grey, but in any case I had to do some adjustments anyways. Similarly, I found that the edges I had painted in light ghost grey appeared a bit too light for my liking. I masked it all off again and applied a light coat of FS36251. Despite all the additional effort needed, the result seemed much better. The next area to work on were the engines. First of all, I airbrushed these panels here with MRP silver. For the smaller panels I used a mix of metallic and rust colors. Then I worked on the engine nacelles, where I also used various metallic paints. All of these steps required a lot of masking. Here I used transparent Scotch magic tape, which allowed me to cut along the edges with ease. Further detail painting was required along the flaps and on the vertical stabilizers. Here I used light ghost grey again. On the upper side I used the decals included in the kit. I also used the rest of the decals for some of the panels, even though I wasn't sure if they would pop out too much, given the relatively weathered appearance of the paint job. However, I noticed that there was also a darker option available for some of the decals. After applying a few coats of setting solution, all the decals adhered nicely to the model, blending in with the overall finish. Nevertheless, I masked off some of the lighter decals and sprayed on a thin coat of dark paint. Then I did even more detail painting on some of the vents and position lights. I was quite pleased with the overall result. To give this Raptor a dirtier and weathered appearance, I applied acrylic washes along the panel lines and rivets. As you can see, they accentuate all the panels and recesses. The excess of the wash was removed using a damp cotton bud. Overall, the painting and weathering process proved to be quite challenging, as expected. Finally, I attached the pitot tubes to the nose, using superglue. I sealed everything using a mixture of flat and gloss clear from Mr. Color. Following that, I removed the liquid mask from the canopy. The clear part needed a bit of polishing, but overall everything had turned out quite well. Then it was time to create a base for the completed aircraft. I used a wooden board that I made a bit more special. I used some stamps to create this inscription on the sides. For the upper side I simply printed out this runway, which is just a screenshot of a flight sim. I glued it in place and securely packed everything for Marie. I made sure during the construction process that it would be easy for Marie to reassemble the aircraft with the base later on. And I was really glad to hear that everything arrived safely and Marie was very happy with the model. This was indeed a very special project. I want to thank Marie for finally motivating me to tackle this challenging paint scheme. Overall, I was positively surprised by the quality of this Revell kit. There were no major issues with the assembly, so the true challenge was indeed the painting process. While I'm not entirely satisfied with the outcome, I'm quite pleased with how my Raptor turned out. Especially when displayed in a flying position, the Raptor is such an impressive aircraft. I think the base also adds a lot to that, despite its simplicity. Anyways, I'm constantly working on new projects whenever time allows. Editing these videos consumes much of my free time, so for the latest updates on current models, be sure to follow my Facebook and Instagram channels. Please check them out using the links in the description. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd appreciate if you did so now. That wraps up this video. Thanks for tuning in and see you in the next one. Bye.